What's up there, YouTube? So today I was going to talk to you guys about Davinci Resolve, Premiere, and Edius. And here's what happened. So I had a customer, a client, so I back up every wedding I've ever done. Literally, I have tapes of the original DV tapes that I originally shot 20 years ago. Seriously. I shot a wedding in 2000. A friend of mine's wedding who recently passed away. I miss you, Josh. But anyway, he passed away. Anyway, I shot his wedding in 2000. I have the original DV tapes of his wedding. So I'm a huge stickler about backing everything up. I've got a separate NAS with a RAID array in it, where all those drives are backed up, like 9 terabyte, 4 9 terabyte drives in it. Everything's backed up on there. Everything's backed up on external drives. Everything's backed up in the computer on the other drives. I back up everything. I'm very, very, very religious when it comes to backing up my files. So I had a couple, it was last year sometime. I did a wedding for a couple over in Cape Coral area over on the Gulf Coast. And it was a beautiful wedding, and Michelle and Garrett, and they contacted me after I sent the thumb drive. I put the teaser online. They loved it. They shared it with everybody. It was awesome. And then shortly after that, a month and a half, 2 months later, whatever, I sent them thumb drives with the full documentary edit. And I just included 4K files, which I later changed my policy for that. And I'll explain why. And it wasn't my fault, wasn't their fault. It wasn't the equipment's fault. It was just the standardizations of the different types of file types. It's sometimes you can't get the 4K files to play on a TV if your connection isn't fast enough, if the bit rate's not high enough. For instance, when I put my I bought an NVIDIA Shield for that specific reason, so that I can take a thumb drive, pop it in the NVIDIA Shield out in the living room. Even though my TV has a USB port and can play the files, I pop it in the Shield so I can have it in surround sound, and I see what it sounds like through the good stereo. And I sit and watch every video I make on the thumb drive in there, so I know it played fine. So I sent them the thumb drives, and they come in wood boxes and little wood thumb drives with their little names or initials or something on them. And I sent them to them, and a couple months later, a month or so later, they said, we've been trying these drives with multiple TV. We can't get them to play. They keep skipping. We're having errors. We can't seem to get them to play. And it's a combination of multiple things because it's all 4K. So what I started doing was providing just HD files and 4K files. So I provide both. And a H.264 HD file, just like you'd get off of YouTube. Almost everything can play that. And the 4K files in H.265, because of the compression, I can make them small enough to where you can put them on the thing. And that way, if in future more devices are able to support H.265, like Apple TV, which already supports it, Apple TV should play the file if it's an MP4 and H.265. But as the technology gets better, it gets a little bit easier to play. They'll have the full 4K files. Well, the problem was right when I delivered it was the same time I quit using Adobe. So I save the project. Now, I don't save the final files because I save all the projects. And this is like the first time I've been a Creative Cloud subscriber for years. So, and I've used Adobe. I have Adobe Premiere Pro CS6. Actually, that's what I put on when I canceled Adobe. I threw Premiere CS6 on here. I put Photoshop CS6 on here. I put, Audition CS6, and I just recorded my stuff and used the stuff that was in there. It had enough features in the old version of Photoshop to do most of what I wanted to do anyway. And then I used other apps like Affinity Photo and different things. But anyway, and I switched over to Davinci Resolve and Edius. So I've been an Edius user since before Edius was Edius. And if you know anything about me, you know that's what I do. But I've got version 9 or something. I didn't upgrade to version 10. I'm waiting to see what the next version is because 9 seems to work just fine for me, really. And I don't do that much in it, but I have been doing a lot in Davinci Resolve. And I've noticed, this is what's bringing me to this. So I had to resubscribe to Adobe Creative Cloud, just for 1 month. I paid for a month of Premiere so that I can export her project. So what it is I save the project, all the rendered files, all the project files, but the final exports I delete because I have the project file. So if I export the full wedding ceremony and the documentary edit, and it's 20 gigs, I just delete that and the teaser. Normally, sometimes I keep the teaser on there. If it's small, I'll just leave it on there. But if it's like big files like that, I'll delete it because I've got all the individual files from each camera on there. I've got the thing's 200 gigs anyway, so I don't really need that extra 20 gigs. So to save space, I delete those files, and then but I still have the project. So if I open the project in Premiere, it all pops right back up. I can export it again and do whatever. But of course, I canceled Premiere. so I could not open the project. And I was like, oh boy. So normally what I do is I tell them, send back the drives. If you have a problem, send the drives back. I'll take the files off the drive, check them out, see if they're working. If they're not, I'll re-encode them from the files on the drive, because those are the exported files, into a more easy format. And that's what I was planning to do, was just render them out. I've got multiple programs for rendering the files. I can just render them out in Handbrake or something to 1080p files, throw those back on the drive, and send those drives back to them. Right? So they get the original drives with an HD version and a 4K version. I'll re-encode the 4K or whatever I've got to do to make it fit and make them work. And that way they have HD versions that will clearly play, probably will play. More than likely will play just fine. So I haven't been using Adobe Premiere in a year. And since I stopped using Adobe Premiere, I changed from my AMD Radeon RX 580 to the, you see it down there in my case. So I built this desk too, so that I can have my keyboard slide up underneath my desk. I can work, I can play piano, I can do all my music stuff, and I built this desk. And I'm going to put lights up underneath it, and I've made it where I can organize my cables, and I built a cool shelf with cables and Unistrut and cables over there from scrap Unistrut from work. I bolted it on there, and then I used these cables that we had from lights, and I bolted them on and have it held with cables. So I upgraded my video card. I went to export the wedding, and I set it to 4K H.264. And since I had upgraded my video card, I haven't used Premiere because I stopped using Premiere. And then I think in January or something like that, I upgraded the video card to an RTX 3070 gigabyte Vision. So I hear my cat outside meowing for me. He wants to come in. I'll go let him in a minute. I went to render the file, and I noticed when I rendered the file, it rendered so fast. I thought, what is it? Did it just render just this last section? Did I have the timeline an in and out marked, and it's just rendering just the reception? I looked, no, it rendered the whole thing. It rendered it so much faster than Davinci Resolve. Like, I'll make this video here now, and I'll edit it in Davinci Resolve, and I'll export it as a 4K file, and it's so much slower. You guys, let me know if there's a setting in Davinci Resolve to use the video card, or if there's some kind of setting I don't know about, because I don't understand how it rendered so much faster on this upgraded PC that I have. In Premiere was like night and day. The difference between exporting was like, it like zipped through it. And I was like, wow. And that was changing size from 4K to 1080p, 24 frames per second. Everything else was the same. And I thought, wow, maybe it's another setting. So I exported it again as a H.265 file. 4K, and I exported that again, and it exported super fast. And I thought, man, this thing's exporting faster than anything. So I'm going to do a test right now. I'm going to test I'm going to take the exported 4K file, bring it back in Premiere on a new project with nothing else loaded, bring it back in, export it back out as a 4K file, export it as a 1080p file. And then I'm going to bring it into Davinci Resolve and do the same thing, export that one file out as a 4K, export it out as a 1080p, like just a standard YouTube 1080p. And then I'm going to bring it in Edius, which also uses the NVIDIA card for encoding, and see how that works. Because I haven't tried Edius since I got my video card, and see how that exports. Maybe that'll export faster too. So let's give it a shot and see. I had an issue with my Blueberry software. I've got a screen recording software from Blueberry Software. I paid for it a while back, and I was just trying that, and it seemed to work pretty good. But then I captured the whole thing in Premiere. I finished it, went to save it, and it wasn't showing up. It was showing that it wasn't there, and then it would not save. It wouldn't save at all. So I had to discard the entire thing. So I rendered this file out, not this one, but I rendered a file out in Adobe Premiere, and it took exactly 21 minutes to render this out. So I'm back, and this time in Davinci Resolve, and I'm gonna cut and show you how fast it's rendering, how it rendered in Premiere. I'm gonna render it out again in Premiere and redo it, but I guess I could, but let's see how long it takes to do this. So if I go right here to render, and I'm gonna pick YouTube 1080p, vertical resolution, name, we're gonna call it Davinci Export HD. This is Davinci Export. So let's see how long it takes to export this thing in Davinci. So add to render queue. And then up here, timeline 1, untitled project, Davinci, blah, blah, blah. Render all. So by the way, in OBS, there's an option to use NVIDIA encoder, which I did not do. So I didn't use the NVIDIA encoder to do it because I wanted to make sure that this was using the NVIDIA encoder. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to start streaming again and come back whenever this thing gets closer to being done, and we'll see how long it's going to take. It doesn't give me, I don't see it. I'm looking around. An estimated time. Duration, timeline 1. It's not giving me an estimated time of how long it's going to take to render this. One of them jobs, but I can see clearly time remaining. Okay, so it says 43 minutes remaining. It's only at 2%. 43 minutes, so twice as long. Let's see how long it takes. Literally, Premiere rendered this out in 20 minutes from an 4K file. 21 minutes. So it's been right at 20 minutes right now. I'm looking at the time because it was 4:20 when I looked down, and it was about 4:19. So it's been almost exactly 20 minutes, and it's saying it has about 18 minutes left. So it's about 40 something minutes to render. So almost twice as long as it took to render in Premiere. We'll see. We'll see if that's how long it takes when it's done. On Davinci Resolve, this is what's happening. The GPU is only being used 35%, and video encode's not using it at all. It doesn't say anything. Now, the CPU is 92%, and you can see it's maxing out all the cores, so it looks like it's doing a software rendering of this timeline. It's doing everything in software. There is a percentage of the GPU that's being used, but just the 3D. And I don't know what that's for. I don't know if that's just drawing the stuff on screen. Some of that could be used by OBS, but it doesn't seem to be using, because I'm going to bring this up in Premiere and Edius. It doesn't look like it's using, it doesn't look like Resolve is using the GPU at all. And it should be going a lot faster than this if it was using it, but it's like maxing out the CPU. All the cores, most of them, like most of the cores, it's doing a pretty decent job. It's a 12 core, 24 thread processor. the Ryzen 9 5900X. Here, I'll move my screen over. You can see what it is. It's a Ryzen 9 5900X right there. And it's not using it, like, at all, hardly. Anyway, looking at this, it looks like it's finally finishing. It's at 10 seconds, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's 4:56 p.m. So that makes it almost exactly 40 minutes. So almost exactly twice as long. It started at 4:19 or 4:18, and it's 4:56. So that's what? That's right at 40 minutes. So almost exactly twice as long to render this in Davinci Resolve as it took to render it in Adobe Premiere. Here I am in Adobe Premiere, and first off, the thing that I was telling you about before that was really nice was if you go to File, like this is the same exact file on the timeline. Premiere recognizes the markers that I set in the file when I encoded the file. This is their same H.265 file, 4K file. And if I go to Export Media, and I pick right here the same exact HD quality 1080p, if I just click here and I go more presets and go to YouTube, Premiere Export HD. So this is the exact settings I used. And the cool part is if I click this screen here, it's going to go to Adobe Media Encoder. Here I am in Adobe Media Encoder, and there's the file. It's ready to go. And what I like about Adobe Media Encoder, I'm looking at, see, I've put this up on my monitor up top here. So if I move it down, it might be a little bit easier to. What's cool is I can set like one for HD, one for something else, and boom, I can just start encoding this, and then I can go back to Premiere and continue editing. So if I click start, now it's going to encode that timeline, and it's estimating this number goes up, but it took exactly 21 minutes. And that's even waiting for Premiere or Media Encoder to finish with the check mark, because it says it's done. It said it was done at like 19 minutes and something. And I said, well, I got to wait for the check mark. So I started timing it. The check mark took another minute and a half or something like that to get it. So maybe 22 minutes max. 22 minutes was the longest time. That's how long it took. Look at the GPU. It's at 87%. Now the CPU's at 80%. So it's Premiere is maxing out the CPU. Not maxing it. It's not going 100% like Resolve did. But look at this. Video encode. This is video encode. This is from, see, this line was flat. There was nothing in video encode when I was using Resolve. Nothing. So it wasn't using anything for the video encode. Now the GPU is also higher. Look, this is the 3D is staying up there too. So it's using both that and the video encode of the RTX. Seems to be working good for games and rendering, obviously. It's rendering this file like twice as fast. So look, it's using 90%. Like the Davinci Resolve was only using like, what, 30% of the GPU? It wasn't hardly using the GPU at all. NVIDIA's clearly, Adobe's clearly using all of the GPU power to render this file. I don't know if there's a setting. If you guys can let me know if there's a setting in Resolve to use the GPU more for rendering. I couldn't find it. I didn't know. I looked everywhere and I couldn't find a setting. So if anybody can comment below and let me know if there's a setting to make it use the GPU for video encoding in Resolve, because that's a really big deal for it to take twice as long. It's, you know, I'm not in a rush most of the time to do this stuff. It doesn't bother me to sit here and render it, but if I have the power to do it, why not use it? Why not use the power that I have to render it? We are exactly 20 minutes in, 20 minutes and 20 seconds to be exact. So it took 20 minutes and 20 seconds, but now it does the same thing that it always did. And it says it's done, but I'm sitting here waiting. So I'm gonna wait until the check mark comes. So basically you're looking at 21, 22 minutes tops. It's probably about 22 minutes. So technically half the time it took Davinci Resolve to do the same exact thing. Half the amount of time. The exact same settings and everything, H.264, YouTube, 1080p, full HD. Let's see. I know, I'm just sitting here looking at it. There, it's done. Okay, so it was it's 5:23 still, so it's basically 22 minutes. So 22 minutes and 41 minutes for the Davinci Resolve, or 40 minutes. So it's basically half the time. So one more time, let's try Grass Valley Edius. Let's see what that does. All right, so now I'm in Edius, and the funny thing is OBS wants to capture, because Edius is the way Edius works is all these are separate windows, and you can move them however you want to, the timeline and everything. Because it's like that, I normally capture OBS in window capture. It'll capture the entire Premiere window. Well, Edius, each one of these windows is separate, so it doesn't know which. See, this is a separate window. It kind of docks itself to the side, which is really cool, but it doesn't, OBS doesn't know how to capture that. It'll only capture this one window. It won't capture the whole screen. So I had to go to regular display capture in order for it to capture the whole thing, which is funny. But anyway, so here's I brought the footage in. I'm going to throw this footage on the timeline. VA track. I'll just put it on an audio video track. There it is right there. Plays the H.265 file just fine in Edius. Actually, does a beautiful job of playing it. Edius was always super fast. I love Edius. This is a fantastic program. I mean, scrolling's fine. Yeah. See, I love Edius. I love the audio meters. I love everything about Edius. Edius is really an awesome program. It's really awesome. So I've got it on the timeline. I'm just going to export. Let me go to my options first and see settings, file, print to tape, file. Let's see. Export, print to file. I shot Houdini. Come on. H.264. So let's go to Exporter plugin. Export. I don't know if there's a setting here where I have to put, so let's go to working projects. Let's put it back in hers. Let's just do that. Save. And now it's exporting. Let's take a look at the, see, it's saying 1 hour and 20 minutes. Now that's obviously not using the NVIDIA thing. So let's go to Task Manager and see performance, see what it's doing. So it's not using the graphics card at all either. Let's see if there's a setting in here, because it's got it, but for CPU it's not using much. I mean, it's basically doing the same thing as the other one. I'm sure the time will change with conversion. So 1 hour and 20 minutes. So Edius doesn't, it's not fast in Edius either. Adobe Premiere is clearly the winner here. Sorry for sticking my finger in my ear. Adobe Premiere is clearly the winner here with rendering it at 20 minutes. I'm going to render this out, and if it takes longer, if it takes 1 hour and 10 minutes, I'm pretty sure that time will change, but it doesn't look like it's using the video card. Unless there's something, I'll go look on the forums and see if there's a way to force it to use the video card for rendering. But I had an AMD card and Adobe would use it, but Edius wouldn't, and I was irritated. I was like, well, maybe if I got an NVIDIA card, because I know Edius is real picky when it comes to, like, if it has Intel Quick Sync, it'll use that and render faster. And I'm pretty sure it had something for, I could have swore they added something for NVIDIA card for rendering. I'm going to go look in the forums and see if I can find something. Anyway, that's that. So if not, this took forever, and I'll put in the comment below, or I'll add to the end of this when this is done rendering. I'm going to let it render and see how long it actually took. I did a little research, and Edius 10. So Edius X, or Edius 10, has a hardware encoder. So Edius X, the newer version, use hardware encoder. It actually, I was looking on this software encoder thing. It's got a, see if you look here, NVIDIA H.265 NVIDIA hardware encoder exporter. It's built in, so I don't have that option. I didn't see that option in my exporter. I'm not going to sit here and go through the whole Edius thing. I'm going to go look at it real quick, but I don't see it in, I've got Edius version 9. This is a reason to upgrade for me. I was not wanting to upgrade to version 10 because I didn't see anything in it. But if this is added, this would be a really good thing to have if it has this version. So it's still saying it's 21 minutes have passed and it says 45 minutes to go. So there's no point in me even sitting through this whole thing. It's going to take literally an hour and a half to render this thing. It takes longer than NVIDIA, so I'm canceling it. Let's go to File, Export, Print to File. Let's go look. H.265 HEVC. Oh, it does say it's in here. So I don't see. So it's got H.265 exporter, but not NVIDIA, but it has H.265. H.264 doesn't have an NVIDIA exporter, but H.265 does. So if I pick H.265 and enable, let's try this real quick. I did not expect that. So it might be faster to export H.265 from, that's what I normally do. I don't normally do H.264. Enable conversion. .98. Export. It's giving me the option. Why not? It's saying I can export it as H.265 using NVIDIA. So I don't know why it's in documents now. It should be back over here. Let's go back over here. Working projects. I'm going to go to the Edius exporter. Let's just put it in Edius HD YouTube. Save. Yes, I'm going to replace it. And it's still saying it's going to take an hour and 10 minutes using the NVIDIA encoder. Let's see what the task manager is saying. Supposedly using the NVIDIA encoder. Let's see what it says. Yep, it's using the NVIDIA encoder. Hush up. So it's Houdini. Go on. So it's using the NVIDIA encoder. But it's still saying it's going to take an hour. What's the point? Change video format. HD 23.9. There we go. Export. NVIDIA. We'll just rename it because maybe that was it. Save. Okay, now it actually does encode it with the hardware encoder, but it's still taking an hour and 10 minutes. So it's still, well, no, it's dropped down 53. Maybe it'll go faster. I'm gonna let this thing encode and see what it does. So it's using the video card. It's doing the conversion. The CPU isn't being used as much, but it is using the video card, and it's up to 50% or 48%. So it is using the GPU. I'm gonna let this thing go. This encoding go. Here's the little window. It's hard to see when I put it in. It's so dark. Let me put it over here so you can see it. So it's saying an hour and 10 minutes. I'm gonna let this thing go and encode, and let's see what this thing comes up with. Let's see how long it actually took. In Edius's defense, it took 45 minutes. So it took longer than it took for Premiere to make the H.264 file, but it did make an H.265 file. It actually took closer to 50 minutes. I think it was like 48 minutes, like right at 50 minutes. So we'll say 50 minutes to make an H.265 file, not an H.264 file. So let's see how long it would take real quick. I'm just curious. Let's see how long it would take to make an H.265 file. And I had Edius tab open up here trying to find out what was going on with the thing. So let's try changing this to an H.265 file using NVIDIA and see how long that would take through Adobe Media Encoder. So I've got an untitled project here. I didn't label it because it's just a file. So we're going to go to File. Oh, let me highlight it. File. Export Media. And now we're going to do a YouTube HD, but then I'm going to change the file to a, I don't know what's going on here. This is typical of Premiere. Now I've got a thing coming up here. I don't know if it finished loading or something. Oh, see, there, Premiere crashed. That's lovely. Close the program. Adobe Premiere Pro 2023. So it's the latest version. Don't send. Go away. Yeah, it's in there. File, export, media. Okay, this time it worked. Okay, high quality 1080p. So now let's just change this to H.265. Where is it? H.265. The only thing that's changed is custom. We're going to call this. It's still in the same thing. We're going to call this. I'm just going to call it Premiere. H.265. Save. Send to Adobe Media Encoder. And that's the handy thing. Even Edius doesn't allow you to continue editing. It kind of like you have to sit there and wait for it to go through. That's the one thing I really like about Adobe is this Adobe Media Encoder comes right up, and you can set up a batch. Since it's a separate encoder program, you can set up a batch and sit here and just go back to editing. So let's see what this is going to do, encoding that file to H.265. How long is it saying? Well, you're not going to see how long it says because it just remaining time just goes up until it gets closer to what the thing is. So I'll stop and I'll come back and we'll check it out. I want to see what it's going to be like. This is apples to apples now. This is Adobe to Grass Valley Edius, both using NVMe, the NVIDIA hardware encoder. It's taken it about 30 minutes, 33 minutes probably. I figure probably it's got another minute. And it's at 27, 28, maybe 32, 31, 32 minutes for Premiere to export the same exact file. So Premiere does do it faster than Edius. Also, if you look at the task manager, look at that GPU usage. It's at 100%, 99 and 100% GPU usage in Premiere. This is in Premiere. So Premiere is using it like using the GPU a lot to render this file. Now, that said, I just watched a video. Davinci Resolve apparently does also use the GPU, but only when rendering like H.265, just like Edius. So I'm going to compare Davinci Resolve to Edius because so far Premiere's blowing both of them out of the water, at least by a few minutes, like in all the recording, and Premiere uses the GPU for H.264 also. I don't know why they don't use the GPU for H.264 in Resolve or in Edius. I mean, if you're already going to use the hardware, why not use it for both cases? Because it was much faster. It's probably almost exactly 30 minutes. 29, and then it takes about a minute to close it. So about 30 minutes exactly. So it took about 10 minutes longer, 8 minutes longer to do H.265 as opposed to H.264, but it used hardware encoding for both of them in Premiere. So let's take a look at Davinci Resolve and see how fast it encodes H.265 of the same exact thing. See if it's using the hardware. I just noticed when I was watching the video, and it was also taking like 33, 2 or 3 minutes. A couple minutes went past. I went to the bathroom, came back, it still wasn't finished. So I canceled it because I looked down here at the bottom and it said video 3840 by 2160. So it was actually exporting the 4K file. Even though all I changed, I had it as a YouTube HD preset and changed it from H.264 to H.265. It went back and reset the settings back to 4K. So I had to go back and do it again and change it. And we'll see if this comes out shorter or longer. But now it's the same exact setting, but it's H.265. And this is in Premiere. Let's see what it does. I didn't realize it had changed the settings when all I did was change one little setting. So I'm going to render it again. I'm doing all this for you guys. I'm doing it for me too, because I want to see if Davinci will make it do it. But so far, it's still better in H.265 in Edius and Davinci, but not in H.264. Premiere takes the cake on that one. But Premiere is also seeming to take the cake on the H.265 also, because it's, like I said in the last one, see, it's not using the GPU as much to change it to HD. It's using the CPU a lot more to resize it, but it's not using the GPU as much. So I wonder if Edius on H.265, if I changed it to a 4K file, if it would use the GPU more. It might, just like Premiere. We'll see what happens. So it might be better multi-threaded. I always thought Edius did a very good job on multi-threading. So I don't know. Premiere has been going with the 1080p video for only 22 minutes so far, and it's gonna look like it's gonna be done in about, usually it just now finished, so it's probably gonna be about a minute, so about 23 minutes. So less time than the 4K footage. It actually rendered this fast. I mean, really fast. So it changed it to 4K and took 30 something minutes, but when I changed it to 1080p, I guess it has something to do with the fact that I have so many CPU cores. I have so many, because it's a 12 core 24 thread processor, I have so much overhead for CPU usage that it's able to just push that thing through. and the GPUs was high. It was using a lot of video encode GPU power, and now it's not. And so, because it's done, basically it's just ramping down. It's going to save the file. So it's 22 minutes. You're looking at 23, maybe 24 minutes. Now, last time it took forever for it to get through and put the check mark like it was done. So long that I actually stopped it because I was like, well, there's no point in finishing this file if it's gonna, you know, take forever. But this is H.265, 1080p, so it's resizing the video in Adobe Premiere CS 2023, and it renders it really fast. There it was done. So basically 23 minutes. So now we're in Davinci Resolve. I brought the clip back in there again, back in here again. I mean, I'm having to do this multiple times, so I'm getting a little tired of it. So let's go to the export features. We're going to choose YouTube 1080p, but I'm going to change this to H.265. So it's still 1920 by 1080 HD, H.265. Chapters from markers. That's nice that it does chapters from markers in here, just like the other one. So I can set markers and chapters. Add to render queue. I'm going to go to working projects. I'm going to change it to this Davinci Export HD. Just because I don't want to sit here and replace it. So it's ready to go, and now let's see if it actually starts doing what they say it does, and that's change it to H.265. Let's take a look at the task manager. Yep. So this GPU usage, it's at 82%, 70%, 77%. So this wasn't working at all when I made it H.264. It was just rendering slow. It was taking forever. And it wasn't using the GPU. Remember, I came and checked it. It was down here at the bottom. It was barely using anything. Now it's using the GPU. So let's see how fast it will render this. I wish it had an elapsed time. It says 38 minutes remaining, 37 minutes remaining. 34 minutes remaining, 2%. So it's going faster. It's already up to 2%. So it's definitely going faster than it did on the 4K file. So I'm pretty sure it's using the NVIDIA GPU for this. But again, you can't leave this window. You can't edit like in Adobe, you can edit. If you're in a big hurry, Adobe's obviously the clear winner here because you can just render it, put it in the render queue, forget about it, and go back to working on your other thing. But this is rendering an HD file in H.265. Davinci Resolve, it's 8:56, been exactly 30 minutes. So this time, Davinci is coming in second, and Edius is coming in third. Premiere rendered this out in what, 22 minutes or 23 minutes? This one took 32 minutes, took us an extra, right at 30 minutes, almost exactly 30 minutes. Let's see if it's done. Yeah, it's done. It rendered it out, and exactly, I actually clicked to upload directly to YouTube. I didn't want to upload to YouTube, so it doesn't matter. It still rendered it in almost exactly 30 minutes. 8:57, so it's almost exactly 30 minutes. So it was a few minutes slower than Premiere, and about 10 minutes faster than 10 to 15 minutes faster than Edius. They need all this tells me here is it's great that I can edit in the Resolve and export as H.265. That's fantastic. So I'm not worried about the speed. I just thought it was a whole lot faster. I guess what it was it was faster for H.264 in Premiere. And that's what gave me a shock. I was like, wow, this thing's going really fast, because I exported H.264 out of Resolve before, and I noticed that it was much slower than that. It seemed to take forever. So it was good that it does H.265 using the NVIDIA hardware in Resolve, and it does in Edius too. So if I needed to use Edius, I could. Yes, it's faster than software in Edius, but it's still quite a bit slower than in Resolve, and especially in Premiere. Premiere is the king when it comes to rendering these things out. It rendered everything much faster than both of the other programs. Not much faster than Resolve, but quite a bit faster than Edius. But I am on version 9. Maybe version 10 has improved more. So we'll see what happens with version 12. It's on version 11. It's version 12. Version 11 would be next. It's Edius version X, which is 10. I'm on 9. Not much improved. There was a few improvements, like they added where you could uncheck NVIDIA hardware encoder to do software. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but other than that, I don't see a real need to upgrade to version 10 right now. But I might upgrade if they announce if this usually they do it in the fall. Usually they do it around September, around NAB. They'll announce it and then they'll show it around September, October, November. They didn't this time, so maybe it'll be next year they'll come out with a new version. They'll start talking about a new version, and when they do, I'll upgrade to whenever they do announce it, I'll upgrade to 10 and get 11 for free. That's what I'll do. But it's still, I got to pay a couple $100, or just see if they'll just upgrade to 11 and just go straight from 9 to 11. I like Edius. I liked editing in it, and it seemed the playback was smoother. I like the way it operates better than Davinci Resolve. I've been trying like heck to use Davinci Resolve, and I just still don't like it as much as I like Premiere and Edius. I like those way better than Resolve. Resolve does some things that are very odd, like why it does it in these odd ways, and I don't like the timeline. I don't like how the timeline grabs on and moves around with your mouse. When you move it over, it automatically moves the time. It's annoying to me. I'm not used to it. So I've been using it for months now, but I still don't like it as much as I like Edius and Premiere. Edius works like Premiere. When you grab the timeline, you can move it, but it doesn't just move the timeline when your mouse moves over. It drives me crazy in Resolve how it acts. There's a lot of different things in Resolve that I don't like. Little things like the media pool and then bringing the files in, and it was so much easier in Edius and Premiere to just drag the folder into there, and it would put it all in there in order, and then I could just keep track of it that way. I'm old school, so I'm used to doing all the stuff on the computer like it's on my computer, not like, I make folders inside of folders with the names of all the stuff. Like if I go to my working projects and I go to the Michelle and Garrett. So if you look in here, see, I got Adobe Audition Interchange. These are the Adobe things that they added. Audio, documentary edit, drone, exports, motion graphics template, music, Panasonic, that's one camera, Z6-1, Z6-2, Z50. So I've got two Z6s and a Z50. And I put them in there in the order that they are in the thing. So when I go to Z6-1, there's all the files from the Z6-1 in the folder. And then all I have to do in Premiere, it's trying to create little thumbnails here in Windows. All I have to do in Premiere is just drag that Z6-1 folder into the bin in Premiere. All I have to do is just take this Z6-1 folder, drag it into the bin in Premiere, and it makes its own bin, and the files are there. And it's just simple to me. It just makes sense. I'm used to dragging the folders into the thing. You can do some of that in Resolve, but it's not as convenient. It doesn't look the same on the other side. It's just not as good. I just don't like it as much. It's to each his own. I guess I could get used to it. I'm used to it. I can use it, and I've been using it. It's not terrible, but I do like the way Edius works better. But anyway, so there you go. So far it's Premiere's one, but Resolve isn't far behind as far as rendering goes. So there you go. Anyway, take it easy, YouTube. If you like this video, thumbs up, thumbs down if you didn't like it. Holler at you later. Take it easy. I'm out.